You're listening to the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. On today's episode of the podcast, we preview the ODI series between Australia and Zimbabwe. It's the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast, and let's get started. Let's have a look at the ODI Series Fixture for this ODI series between Australia and Zimbabwe. 3 ODIs to be played in this ODI series. All 3 ODIs will be played in Townsville, up in North Queensland, at the Riverway Stadium. The first ODI will be on August the 28th. The second ODI will be on August the 31st. And the third and final ODI between Australia and Zimbabwe will be played on the 3rd of September. Let's have a look at the ODI stats between Australia and Zimbabwe. Head-to-head in ODIs overall, Australia have won 27 matches to Zimbabwe's 2. Both teams' records in Australia and ODIs. Australia have won 10 matches, Zimbabwe have won none. Leading run scorer is Ricky Ponting with 949 runs. Leading wicket taker, Shane Warne with 21 wickets. Most dismissals, Adam Gilchrist with 26. Most catches, Ricky Ponting with 12. Most matches, Ricky Ponting with 21. And the first ODI match between Australia and Zimbabwe was back in 1983 during the Cricket World Cup. Let's have a look at Australia's ODI squad and talk about some of the challenges facing Australia in this ODI series against Zimbabwe. The squad that Australia have selected for this series is Finch, Abbott, Ashton Agar, Carey, Green, Hazelwood, Labuschagne, Mitchell Marsh, Maxwell, Smith, Stark, Stoinis, and Warner. It's a pretty strong squad. There's no Travis Head. There's no Pat Cummins. Both of them have various reasons of missing out this series. Travis Head, for a start, is not taking part in the series against Zimbabwe or New Zealand because he is with his partner and they're about to welcome their first child into the world. So we wish Travis Head all the best. That's why he's not playing in the ODI series against Zimbabwe and New Zealand. Pat Cummins has been rested for this series against Zimbabwe, and he's also been rested for the series against New Zealand. Obviously, it's a big summer ahead. Obviously, T20 World Cup, Test cricket, West Indies and South Africa this summer. So a lot of cricket on the plate of the Australian skipper in Pat Cummins. So that's why he's been rested. And he's also got a bit of a niggle with his hip as well. So Australia not taking any chances. And there's other players to fill the void left by Pat Cummins. So it's a pretty strong squad for the squad against Zimbabwe. You think Australia would do well. There's not too many challenges with the bat and the ball, but there's some areas that Australia would like to get better at, especially following their last ODI series against Sri Lanka. There are a few areas that they need to improve on. This ODI series for Australia is the first ODI series that Australia will play in Australia since 2020, when they played India in late 2020. So it's been a while since we've had any one-day cricket in Australia. We've had so many disruptions over the last 2 years and last couple of summers. So it's good to see one-day cricket back again. Obviously, one-day cricket's been at the talking point of the news in the cricketing world. Does it have any relevance? Well, hopefully we see some big crowds attend the 2 series against Zimbabwe and New Zealand in Townsville and Cairns. I think we will. And most people will go out and watch the Australian team in one-day cricket. And they'll do the same against England as well when they come out for that ODI series later on in the summer. Australia are coming off 2 ODI series defeats of late. They lost recently to Sri Lanka, 3-2, the best of 5 ODIs in Sri Lanka. Now, that series didn't count towards the Cricket World Cup Super League. That was not a series that counted towards that. Earlier on in the year, they lost against Pakistan 2-1 at the best of 3 in that series in Pakistan after the Test series. So a couple of series losses for Australia, and they would like to get back to winning ways against Zimbabwe in this ODI series to start off the Australian summer, which is a bit of an early start to the Australian summer. Obviously, it's still winter. It's not even summer. It's in August, so it's quite an early start. Let's talk about the batting. In Sri Lanka, they did struggle with the bat. Didn't quite bat how they would have wanted Australia. Now, different conditions in Sri Lanka for a start. It was spinning tracks. Sri Lanka had potent spinners, and Australia were tested. So especially with a not a T20 World Cup, a 50-over World Cup next year in India, those are some concerns going forward for this one-day team, following what we saw in Sri Lanka struggling against the spinners, and that's been Australia's Achilles heels for so long, not only in one-day cricket, but also in Test cricket as well when they toured the subcontinent. But they are getting better, but in that ODI series, they did struggle. I think this time around, they won't struggle against the spinners. Zimbabwe don't have any spinners who are going to trouble the Australian batsmen, so I think the spin problem, won't be a factor in this series. Also in Australia, it doesn't turn as much anyway, especially on one-day wickets in Australia. They're quite good for batting, quite flat. The ball comes onto the bat quite nicely. Be interesting to see how the pitch plays in Townsville over the 3 matches. It'll be interesting to see how it plays. But with the Australian batsmen, there's some batsmen in this side that are under pressure. Others would like to put their hand up to be a part of the World Cup squad next year in India. So for Australia in this series, it's important for Australia with the bat to do the basics well with the bat, build partnerships, rotate the strike, convert the starts into big scores. And I will emphasize that point, convert starts into big scores. That's the problem that Australia had in Sri Lanka. Batsmen got 50s and didn't convert them into hundreds or big hundreds because they got out. They didn't do that in the series against Sri Lanka, as I mentioned. They got to do that in the series against Zimbabwe and New Zealand, and also the series against England, which is down the track in the summer. So for Australia, convert starts into big scores. When you get a 50, go on and get a big century. Australia need to do that because you need someone in the top order to really lay down the foundation and the base for other batsmen to work around with. And that's what Australia need to do. And hopefully they'll do that in this series against Zimbabwe. Don't lose wickets at regular intervals. Make sure you have wickets in hand so you can have as many batsmen towards the back end of the innings so you can accelerate and attack in the death overs and really put Zimbabwe and their bowlers under pressure. Because their bowlers will be tested, Zimbabwe, because they haven't played against Australia all that often. They haven't, bowled to many of the Australian batsmen. So if Australia can have wickets in hand, they can put the Zimbabwe bowlers, I should say, under pressure. Also, play aggressively, positive intent as we associate with Australian teams. I want to see that from Australia. Be positive, be aggressive. If there's a bad ball, dispatch it to the boundary. All that basic stuff as we associate with batting in cricket. One of the batsmen that are under pressure in this batting lineup for Australia is Aaron Finch. Now, he is under pressure, Aaron Finch. I can't stress that enough. The Aaron Finch situation reminds me of Owen Morgan in England. He's in the side because of his captaincy, and he's struggling with the bat, and we don't have any other options for captain for this Australian team. It's sort of the same thing with England with Owen Morgan, and Aaron Finch is sort of, doing like an Owen Morgan type thing. We're keeping him in the side because of his captaincy, and we know he's playing poorly. So for Aaron Finch, this summer for him, in terms of not only the T20 World Cup, because he'll be captain of the Australian side, and Australia looking to defend their T20 World Cup title at home later on this year in October, November, but these 3 ODI series against Zimbabwe, New Zealand, and then England are all 3 important series for Aaron Finch in his one-day career. He needs to score runs, he needs to score some half-centuries and some centuries. Otherwise, his spot will be questioned, especially heading to that 50-over World Cup in India next year. Because as a captain, you are not susceptible to being dropped. And we've seen over the years, captains have been dropped, or they dropped themselves because they've been out of form. Owen Morgan did that for England. He dropped himself for the benefit of the team. I don't think Aaron Finch would do that. So he's under pressure. He needs to score runs, and hopefully he does over the next 3 ODI series, because these series are very important for Aaron Finch in his career in one-day cricket. Also, some other opportunities for batsmen like Labuschagne, Cameron Green. Good opportunity for them to put up their hand for selection for that squad next year in India, for that Cricket World Cup squad. Marnus Labuschagne talked about recently about getting better as a one-day player, especially batting at number 5 in this Australian team. And he thinks he could have done better in the series against Sri Lanka, and he could have done better. Cameron Green has showed promise in Pakistan in that one-day series and also in Sri Lanka. So those two players, Labuschagne and Green, would definitely, hopefully they'll do well in this series, and hopefully they can score runs and add something to this Australian team in this ODI series against Zimbabwe, but also against New Zealand and England as well down the track. So pretty much for Australia, those are the things that they need to work on and address in this one-day team. If they can do that, I think they can score runs on a regular basis in this series against Zimbabwe. But not too many challenges, I think, given how the Zimbabwe team, in terms of their quality with their bowlers, I don't think they'll challenge Australia all that much. So for Australia, it's just about doing the basics well and not being complacent with the bat. Keep doing the same processes and methods that have brought you success in the past. If they can do that, they can score big totals, because if Australia score well over 350 plus in this ODI series in, some of the games, then it's going to be hard for Zimbabwe and their batsmen to chase down the runs, given how strong Australia's bowling lineup is. So, going to be a challenge for the Zimbabwe bowlers to the Australian batsmen. But for Australia, not too many challenges with the bat. They've got to do the basics well. And if they do that, they can have success in this ODI series. Let's talk about the challenges with the bowling for Australia in this ODI series. I don't think they'll have too many challenges with the ball in this ODI series, Australia. Their bowlers will test the Zimbabwean batsmen. They should pick up wickets and bowl well and restrict Zimbabwe to low totals if Zimbabwe are batting first, or bowl Zimbabwe out if they're batting second, chasing a big total in some of the games. Obviously, Australia, they struggled with the ball in the Sri Lanka ODI series because they ran out of options, basically. They had too many injuries. Obviously, Ashton Agar was injured. Marcus Stoinis was injured. Mitchell Starc didn't play because he had that injury to his finger from the T20 series when he cut himself with his spike in his follow-through. Pat Cummins and Josh Hazlewood didn't play all of the games in that 5-game ODI series against Sri Lanka. So they had to rely on the debutant in Kuhnemann, and then Maxwell and Labuschagne and Travis Head for part-time overs of spin. And Australia leaked runs and they ran out of options because of the injuries, and it didn't quite go well for Australia. And also Adam Zampa didn't play on the tour because he missed out due to family reasons. Now, this time around, Australia shouldn't have any problems with options with their bowling. They've got plenty of options because Sean Abbott is back from injury. He would have played in that series in Sri Lanka, but he was injured. Ashton Agar is back. Marcus Stoinis is back. You got Adam Zampa who's back. So you've got a lot of options here with the ball for Australia. So Australia have got a lot of options with the ball. Aaron Finch is quite grateful to have those bowlers back and those options back for Australia with the ball. So I think Australia won't have any problems with the bowling. Not too many challenges. I think they'll be able to, restrict Zimbabwe to low totals and bowl them out in this ODI series. Given how strong their bowling attack is, there's no Pat Cummins, and even without Pat Cummins, it's still a strong bowling attack. And you can rely on, Labuschagne and, Glenn Maxwell for part-time overs of spin. Also, Cameron Green can bowl a few overs as well as the all-rounder in the side. So and Marcus Stoinis as well. So you've still got a lot of options there. So for Australia, they won't have the same problem as they had in Sri Lanka in that ODI series. So pretty much for Australia, it's just do the basics well with the ball. Bowl dot balls to build pressure on the Zimbabwean batsmen. Execute their plans and skills with the ball. Take their chances in the field. Can't give second chances to the Zimbabwean batsmen. Making sure that we're pretty much on in the field. Taking our chances. Stopping runs. All those basics that we associate with fielding and bowling in cricket. Australia making sure that they do the basics well, and that's very important for this Australian bowling attack. So not too many challenges for the Australian bowlers. I think they'll do well in this ODI series against Zimbabwe. Let's have a look at Zimbabwe's ODI squad and talk about some of the challenges facing Zimbabwe in this ODI series against Australia. The squad that they've selected is Chaveka, Buell, Evans, Longwe, Kaya, Catania, Madante, Marahir, Maramandi, Marayonga, Musabandi, Naurira, Nietzsche, Raza, and Williams. Now, I do apologise with the pronunciation of the Zimbabwean players' names. Hopefully by the end of the series we'll get that right. But before we talk about the challenges with both bat and ball facing Zimbabwe in this ODI series against Australia, let's talk about the significance of this tour first of all, because the significance of this tour for Zimbabwe is quite big. Now, Zimbabwe, this is their first tour to Australia since they last toured Australia in 2003-04. Now, in that summer, they had a test series against Australia, which was 2 test matches. Australia won the test series 2-0. The first test was at the Wacker. Australia won by an innings in 175 runs. Matthew Hayden scored his 380 not out. At the time, it was the world record score in test cricket, surpassing Brian Lara's 375, which was the current record at the time before Matthew Hayden surpassed it in that test at the Wacker. The second test at the SCG, Australia won by 9 wickets. Simon Kadich took 6 for 65 in the second innings and bowled well. Also, the ODI Tri-Series was played after that test series, well, played during that summer, I should say, featuring Australia, India and Zimbabwe. Australia won the Tri-Series against India in the final, of course. Zimbabwe didn't have a great Tri-Series. They lost 7 games, 1-0 result in that Tri-Series. First ODI series between Australia and Zimbabwe since 2014. The Tri-Series in Zimbabwe. That's the last time that Australia and Zimbabwe have faced off in an ODI series, either Tri-Series or bilateral series between two countries. And obviously, Zimbabwe's last win against Australia in an ODI was in that Tri-Series in 2014 in Zimbabwe, which featured Zimbabwe, South Africa and Australia. Zimbabwe won by 3 wickets when they versed Australia in that match. Australia made 9 for 209 from their 50 overs. Zimbabwe chased down the runs, finishing 7 for 211 from 48 overs. Won by 3 wickets. Now, before that victory, Zimbabwe's only victory against Australia in an ODI before that victory in 2014 was against Australia back in the 1983 Cricket World Cup. And just a few days ago was the anniversary of that famous victory that took place between Australia and Zimbabwe in the World Cup in 1983. Now, Australia and Zimbabwe have had some close games, and one of the closest games that they had in their history was in the 2000-2001 Tri-Series in Australia, which featured Australia, the West Indies and Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe had a close game at the Wacker in Perth. Zimbabwe lost by a run, chasing 303. And obviously, Damian Martin opened the batting for Australia and carried his bat, which is a rare feat in cricket as an opening batsman, carrying your bat in any format. He made 144 not out off 149 balls. Glenn McGrath bowled the last over and got the job done for Australia, and Australia were able to get the job done and win the match in the end. So Australia and Zimbabwe have had some close matches and some very historical moments over the years, like Matthew Hayden's world record, 380 not out, the close game at the Wacker, the famous win that Zimbabwe had in 2014, and also back in 1983 as well in the Cricket World Cup. So this tour for Zimbabwe is very significant for them. It gives an opportunity for these players who haven't toured Australia before to come to Australia, play against the best in the world, and enjoy playing some cricket and having some fun and touring Australia and seeing what Australia has to offer. Now, let's talk about some of the challenges facing Zimbabwe with the batting and the bowling in this ODI series against Australia. Now, there's going to be a lot of challenges that will face Zimbabwe in this series against Australia with the bat and with the ball. Let's start with the batting. The biggest challenge for them is scoring enough runs to put Australia under pressure in this series. Now, having a look back at the last 2 ODI series that they've played against Bangladesh and India, the scores have been varied. The ODI series against Bangladesh, which they won 2-1 in the end of the best of 3, the totals that they made in that series were 5 for 307, 5 for 291, and 151 all out. The series against India, which they've played recently, which they lost 3-0, the scores that they made in that series varied as well. 189 all out, 161, and 276 chasing in the last game. That's where they lost by 13 runs and nearly got the job done in the last game there. So for Zimbabwe, the challenge is, can they score enough runs against the Australian bowlers and be able to put Australia under pressure when Australia do bat in this ODI series? That will be the biggest challenge for Zimbabwe. Any scores under 150 or over 150 or 200 to 250, Australia will chase down pretty easily, really. They need to be scoring probably 300 plus to give them a chance of actually putting Australia under pressure when Australia do come out to bat and chase down a total. If Zimbabwe bat first, they'll need to score 300 plus scores batting first, because as I said, anything below 250, Australia will just chase down easily. So Zimbabwe, that will be the biggest challenge for them, is scoring runs. Can they score enough runs to put Australia under pressure? That will be the biggest test for their batsmen. And their batsmen will be tested facing quality bowlers like Stark, Hazelwood and Samper, for example. Obviously, no Pat Cummins in this series, but Stark, Hazelwood and Samper are quality. They're going to be tested. So it's how they go about scoring runs and how they go about constructing an innings against this Australian team. That will be the biggest challenge for them. Sakinda Raza will be the key batsman for Zimbabwe. Now, I picked out Raza because he's been in terrific touch. The last two ODI series against Bangladesh and India, he's been scoring runs for fun, and he scored 3 centuries across the 2 series. The series against Bangladesh, he got 252 runs, averaging 252, which is not bad. Highest score of 135 not out with 2 centuries. The recent series that Zimbabwe played against India, he scored 143 runs, averaging 47.66, highest score of 115 with 1 century. And that came in the last game where Zimbabwe lost by 13 runs, chasing 276. Chasing 270 odd against India, obviously. They finished on 276 all out, but it was Raza who kept them in that match, and they only lost by 13 runs and only got over the line. So that's why he is the important batsman for Zimbabwe. If they are able to post scores of, 300 plus to give them a chance, he's probably the one that needs to score bulk of the runs for Zimbabwe. He can't do it alone. You can't rely on one player all the time to score runs. It's for other batsmen within the Zimbabwean batting lineup to support him. And you can't do it all his own. So, it's not guaranteed that Raza will score runs in this series, because the thing is, cricket's unpredictable. You may walk out as a batsman, you may get out first ball for a duck. So other batsmen within the Zimbabwean batting lineup need to support him and need to really bat with him or build partnerships to give themselves a chance. If Zimbabwe can give themselves a chance, post scores of up towards 300, then they're a chance. They're a chance to be competitive and hopefully you cause an upset if they can. But if they get bowled out for 250 odd or below 250, Australia will just chase it down with ease. Given how good Australia's batting is and the quality of the Zimbabwean bowling attack, they'll be severely tested. So the batsmen, that's the biggest challenge. Can they score enough runs to be competitive? That is the biggest challenge for Zimbabwe. And Raza will be the key batsman for them. Let's talk about the challenges facing Zimbabwe with the bowling. There's plenty of challenges facing the Zimbabwean bowlers. They will need to pick up wickets at irregular intervals and early on in the Australian innings to put Australia under pressure with the bat. They're going to be tested, but they've got to do the basics well with the ball, I think, Zimbabwe, by bowling dot balls to build pressure on the Australian batsmen, execute their plans and skills with the ball, take their chances in the field. You can't give second chances to the Australian batsmen. You can't let off David Warner, Finch, Maxwell, Smith, Labuschagne. You can't give them second chances, otherwise they'll make you pay. So for the bowling for Zimbabwe, their bowlers will be bowling against quality batsmen. There will be times where they'll be challenged and put under pressure, and it's how they respond to that challenge will be the key for the bowling attack. Can they take wickets? Can they restrict Australia? That's the biggest challenge. It's going to be a challenge, but you've got to embrace it. It's a part of being an international cricketer. You've got to embrace these challenges with bat and ball. But that's the biggest challenge with the ball for Zimbabwe. They've got to take wickets early, and they've got to restrict Australia, because if Australia bat first and make 350 plus, then their chances of chasing that down as a batting unit is going to be tough, because given how quality the Australian bowlers are, they're going to be put under pressure. So they've got to do the basics right with the ball, Zimbabwe. Just before we finish up about Zimbabwe, and I want to touch on some other key points for this tour for Zimbabwe, but also for the tour as a whole. I think for Zimbabwe, the chances of them winning this series are going to be tough, but you never say never in cricket. You know, it's not guaranteed that someone will win 3-0 or win a series, because there are so many twists and turns in the game, as we know. But the realistic goal, I think, for Zimbabwe is that maybe winning the series is a bit too much for them. If we look at it at a cricketing analytical point of view, maybe it is a bit too tough, because Australia are the stronger side and they should win the series. But I think realistically for Zimbabwe, I think for them it's about trying to get better game by game. If they can get better from game 1 to 2 to 3, then they've made tremendous progress in terms of their development as a one-day cricket team, but also a cricketing team in general. The only way Zimbabwe and other lower-ranked countries and teams around the world are going to get better is by playing against the top teams like Australia, India, England, etc., for them to get better. So this is a perfect opportunity for Zimbabwe to learn and to try and get better as a team by playing good quality opposition like Australia. They've recently played against India, and even though they lost that series 3-0, the last game they only lost by 13 runs. So that's progress. And certainly it will be the same thing against Australia. Let's try and get better game by game. For them, the main goal is to learn as much as they can, have fun playing cricket on this tour of Australia. For many of them, it's their first time going to Australia. Enjoy it, because they'll be here for the T20 World Cup as well, Zimbabwe, because they've qualified for the first round of the T20 World Cup as they try to qualify for the Super 12 stage. So they'll be here for a long while now in Australia, building up to that T20 World Cup, obviously. Definitely in this series, they'll be challenged in all departments, as we mentioned, with the batting, the bowling, and the fielding, but embrace that challenge for Zimbabwe. They've got to embrace that. That's how you become a better side, by being tested and being challenged, being put outside your comfort zone. And by them playing against India and now Australia, they're playing against teams who are much higher above them in terms of rankings and in terms of quality. But I think it will make them better as a cricket team going forward. And we've got to remember that yes, probably the series may be a 3-0 series win to Australia. It may be one-sided. But you're going to have series where they are going to be one-sided, especially against teams like Zimbabwe, etc. But it's all about developing and growing the game and making sure that Zimbabwe get better and improve game by game, because that's what it's all about. But it's good to see Zimbabwe back in Australia. It's been too long, 19 years, since 2003-04 until 2022. It's just been too long, in my opinion. I think we should play more against Zimbabwe, but we don't. That's Australia and Zimbabwe. We don't play a lot against them. But it's great to see them back in Australia. We've touched on a bit about some of the battles that they've had in Australia against Australia in Australia, and some of the memorable moments that Zimbabwe have had. But I hope the Australian team will talk to the Zimbabwean team after each game or after the series. And if Australia, we see that with many teams where when they play against a developing nation or, like Zimbabwe or Afghanistan or Ireland, they always spend a bit of time talking to the team and giving their knowledge and sharing their knowledge, which is very important to do in cricket because you got to share knowledge, you got to teach others, and that's how you learn and get better. So I hope Australia, after this series, will give something back to the game and talk to the Zimbabwean players after each game or after the series and say, these are the areas that we feel like you could do better at. If you do this better, with the bat or the ball, give something back to the game, because at the end of the day, growing and developing the game is key to ensure cricket is in a good place, and also Zimbabwe cricket is in a good place because their players will be able to learn and get better and hopefully win a lot more games of cricket and have success in the future. That's what it's all about. So at the end of the day, that's the perspective that we need to have on this series. Yes, it's going to be probably one-sided, but let's think about the bigger picture, and it's about growing and developing the game to make sure cricket is in a good place going forward. Let's predict who's going to win this ODI series and the leading run scorer and leading wicket taker for the series. I think Australia will win the series 3-0. To me, Australia the stronger team overall, so I think they'll probably win the series 3-0. Leading run scorer for the series, I've gone with Glenn Maxwell. I think he's probably going to have a big series with the bat, Glenn. So let's see what he can do with the bat. Leading wicket taker, I've gone with Josh Hazlewood. I think Josh Hazlewood, he's been in good touch, good form with the ball. He's been taking wickets in all 3 formats for Australia. So I think he'll be the leading wicket taker for this ODI series against Zimbabwe. Those are my predictions for this ODI series. If you're listening to this episode of the podcast on YouTube, let us know in the comments, who do you think will win the series and your predictions for leading run scorer and leading wicket taker for this ODI series. It would be great to hear your predictions and thoughts. This ODI series between Australia and Zimbabwe is important in so many ways. Crucial Cricket World Cup Super League points are up for grabs, but apart from that, this ODI series is important in terms of growing and developing the game of cricket, as Zimbabwe return to Australia for the first time since 2003-04. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. Be sure to subscribe and click the bell to get the latest episodes of the podcast, and like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. Until next time, keep safe and bye for now.